connective tissue. The connective tissue that supports epidermis and binds below the dermis deep to that dermis fat layer. As you may have dissected and seen when you lift the skin, you see the fat layer, that is hypodermis. Why is terms we are using? Because when you will giving the immunization, you will be saying certain immunization has to be in hypodermis, some has to be in subcutaneous. Subcutaneous means in the dermis. Like BCG vaccine, we give a subcutaneous. We lift the baby's skin and just put the needle in the dermis and inject a 0.1 ml of the this one. So that's why the words are there. Dermal papillas, we have said. Now this dermal papillas and dermis is practically divided into two layers. We'll be seeing in detail. Just remember the layer which is just beneath the epidermis is called papillary layer. It is called the papillary layer, and a deeper layer is called the reticular lamina. This is what we are going to see when we see the slide. Okay, so they what is basic function of this? They provide basically nutrition and a basic support, and it gives adhesion to the epidermis. Okay, so as we'll go ahead, so now see this slide. If you see this slide, we can see this is epidermis, this is dermal papillas, which is just projecting inside, and this is a deeper dermis below. So if you see just beneath the epidermis, this is loose connective tissue, loose areolar connective tissue, which is very much rich in the blood supply, especially in certain region of the body. Still much more blood supply, like on the red of the lip, because vermilion surface of the lip which looks reddish. Why? Because there is a lot of blood vessels just beneath the epidermis. And as we go down, we can see more fibrous structure. We call it as reticular fiber layer. We call it as reticular fiber layer. So the part which is just beneath the epidermis is called papillary layer. Deeper down, we call it this is a reticular layer. So these are the two words what we use. So we'll see first the layers of the dermis. One, papillary layer. So this part is papillary layer. What it contains? It contains type 1 and type 3 collagen fibers. That is what we have to remember, type 3 collagen fibers. Then it is very rich in capillary and neural network. Basically, if you try to see carefully in this dermal papilla, you can see one receptor. Okay, this is Mesenian's receptors, which can be seen. This is mechanoreceptor, very sensitive mechanoreceptors. Okay, so that will be seen papillary layer. In reticular layer, we'll see the more lot of fibers, which is more of a supportive nature. It has more of a collagen type 1 compared to and very less amount of collagen 3 and 4. And now what is important? This term, Langerhans line. You may have heard this word in abdomen. Basically, this part of the dermis, the reticular layer of the dermis, plays a important role. They arrange in a particular direction. So they give a skin a specific zone. So like in a horizontal linings on the abdomen. And this horizontal lining, what we do whenever we want to take an incision as a surgeon, we usually take an incision in the line of Langerhans line. If you go in gross anatomy book or you go in the atlas, you will see Langerhans lines of the body. Usually we try to follow those lines. And if I take an incision parallel to this line, healing is much better compared to if we cross the perpendicular to Langerhans lines, healing takes a bit more longer time. So as far as possible, surgeons will take always incision in the line of Langerhans line. Where it is present, it is presented reticular layer. That is what you have to do. This is a usually MCQ ask. Langerhans lines is because of, it is because of dermis. Which layer of dermis? It is a reticular layer of dermis. That is what we have to remember. Now we talked about initially dermo-epidermal junction. So this is dermo-epidermal junction. So what is this dermo-epidermal junction means? If you try to see the part which is above, you can see the actin filament. This actin filament is in the cytoplasm of a cell. Now you can see the yellow color is a cell membrane. And if you can see the in yellow color, we can see the spring-like structure which is coming out from the cytoplasm of the cell, passing through the cell membrane and going into this is what we call transmembrane protein called as integrin. This is the protein which is coming from the transmembrane protein of the epidermis. connecting to the dermis. This is called integrins. There are set of integrin molecules. Different types of integrins are there in the body that we will be studying in the dermatology separately. But now this integrin connects to the actin filament. Actin filaments are contractile filaments, correct? So when they are connected to the cytoskeleton, they are connected via few proteins called stallin, paxillin, vinculin. These are the things which will help for the movement of the cell, for the healing of the cell, for the development of the cell. So this indirectly we always call this is as it looks like a button, half of the button. We call it as hemidesmosome. We call it as the hemidesmosome. So this hemidesmosome is formed by integrin, then the sets of protein, if you don't remember all the names, and it connects to the cytoskeleton, that is actin filament. That is one of the things. And now this integrin connects to the dermis by two important proteins. One is called fibronectin and second one is called laminin. Because now this plays a major role in various type of exfoliative dermatitis. And this is called as exfoliative dermatitis. It right starts from our psoriasis or even the dandruffs and all those things. Here there may be some problems, some issues will be there. They may get infected with the fungal infection. So that is what. So this junction complex, also called as focal adhesion molecules. These are called focal adhesion molecules. Transmembrane protein is there, integrin, that word you have to remember because you are going to get lot of drugs related affecting on the integrins. We talk about cosmetology, we talk about various types of drugs which may affect on this. Attached to the cytoplasm, in the cytoplasm to actin filament, and the proteins which attaches are alpha-actin, vinculin, tallin, paxillin. These are the molecules which forms the hemidesmosome. Outer side is attached to two proteins that is in the dermis called as the laminin and fibronectin. These are all proteins, so there will be some genetic disorders related with this also. This is called focal adhesion molecule. You can see some total. When I see this pack, this looks like a button. That's why it is called hemidesmosome. It is called as the hemidesmosome. And now if you try to see it here, this can be seen under the fluorescent microscope. You can see all these fibers. These fibers are the green color fibers are laminin, and the red, this bright color, yellowish red color are the integrin. They are connected to the dermis. This is a cell, black color cell is it. So this is how the cells are adherent to the dermis. That is what we call junctional complex. Functions of the junctional complex. Very immense function is that one is cell signaling. That is the important thing. We know that there is a separate branch called cell signaling. This is how like pectoral region is formed. Later on, the joint is formed. That is called. This is all is well defined, and this difference because of these junction complexes. Growth of the tissue, and growth of the tissue means I can say other way around. Like fingers are web-like in humans during development. There is a skin between the two fingers, and later on, because of apoptosis, some amount of the skin degenerates, and that is what it helps. So this again is a function of the junctional complex. So there are few functions of the junctional complex. You can see in transmission electron microscope, these are the hemidesmosomes. Arrows are shown here. Okay. So junctional complexes in dermis. Now dermis, again some summarization, connective tissue of the skin contains a rich network of blood supply and lymphatic vessels. Blood vessels that nourishes the cells of the epidermis. Two major plexus are there. And the important thing is that the skin also plays an important role in the thermoregulation. Apart from the skin surface, we also talk about that whenever there is a lot of heat, our skin gets reddish. Why? Because the arteriovenous channel just in at the epidermis, in the dermis, that is in papillary, helps in the release of the heat. That is one. And second thing, this also helps in the secretion of sweat gland or sweat. Okay, we'll see about that. Now we talk in the dermis, we get variety of receptors. You may have dealt in great detail in physiology. I am just summarizing that thing. There are receptors which can be classified as uncapsulated and capsulated. What is uncapsulated? Can you see this figure? You can see the yellow color axon which crosses the dermis, and those axonal terminals goes into the lower layers of the epidermis. This is free nerve ending. This is free nerve ending. So we start with tactile disc associated with epidermal tactile cells which functions as receptors for light touch, that is Merkel cells. Then free nerve endings, it ends the, especially in the myelinated structure ends in the dermis, but its extension goes in lower epidermal layer. What is this function? Its function is fine touch. We talk about two-point discrimination, correct? This fine touch, when this fine touch is too much, something pricks you, that gives a noxious stimulus, we call it as pain. And we will talk about, you talked in the spinal cord about the spinal reflexes about the pain. Just simple thing you have to remember, that any noxious stimulus gives a reflex arc. Noxious means which is in a higher quantity, it will give a reflex reaction. Like if I touch to the sharp structure, or if I touch to the heat, or too much of heat is there, I withdraw myself first, and then I will see what is there. Means conscious will know later. Before that, I will be having the reflex action, and that is what. So this information is passing very much from the free nerve ending, that is fine touch, heat. So heat is coming, going. Heat sensation is going through the free nerve endings. Pain, especially sharp shooting pain, cutting pain, that goes through the free nerve ending, and the itching. Itching is one of the thing which has a lot of theoretical discussion. As we will go ahead, we talk about itching. See, itching, we start scratching our skin, and then later on we see what happened. So again, that is also, so this all this, yes. So this is what we call as the touch, heat, pain, and free. This is free nerve ending. Then the root hairs also gives free of for some of the free nerve endings. So root hair plexus helps in detection of the movements of hair. So some air flows from my surface of the skin. The hair gets that detection of the movements of hair. Whenever I get in fight and fight, this hair follicle stands up. This all this thing happens just because of this free nerve ending. So these are the uncapsulated one. Then there will be capsulated, a wonderful capsulated. You see, do you remember which receptor is this? They are placed. They are Pacinian receptors, laminated receptors, oval in structure, approximately 0.5 to 1 millimeter in thickness. It may have a Schwann cell covering almost 15 to 50 thin concentric laminas. Where they are situated in the skin? See, they are situated deep in the dermis at the junction of dermis and the hypodermis. So they are deep in the skin. Okay, so these are encapsulated. That's why they are called encapsulated receptor. Usually, these laminas are formed by the Schwann cells. So in demyelinated diseases, this may get affected. What is the function of Pacinian corpuscles? Sensing. See, there we talked about the fine touch. Now here we talk about the coarse touch. Pressure. Pressure means a sustained touch. We can differentiate between different types of pressure. We can, and that also initial phases is coarse touch, and then there is a pain, and then the vibrations. Now, most of this pressure and all those things passes from the spinothalamic tract, and that is what we talk about. So this is carried by the passenger receptors. Only thing is that when these receptors are deformed for longer time, what will happen? They will get into the accommodation, or they will go into the accommodation reflexes. So this is what we talk about the passage. Where the passenger receptors, as far as anatomy is concerned, is between the dermis and hypodermis, deep down. Okay, this is what difference you have to remember. Second one, this is what we see at the junction in the epidermal papilla. What we call this encapsulated structure. large figure, you can see the lot of strand cells are covering it up. And this is what we call as the ductile corpuscle, Meissner's corpuscle. So where the Meissner corpuscles are present, they are around 150 micron in thickness. They are usually at dermo-epidermal junction. Dermo-epidermal junction. Where Pacinian receptors are there, they are at the dermo-hypodermal junction. This is the difference. That is what we have to know. Where the free nerve endings are there, they starts at the ear and their nerve endings will go into the lower part of the epidermis. So this is the difference. So what are functions present in dermal papillas? More of these Meissner's receptors are there in the lip, fingertips, palm, and soles. Why? Because they have to carry a sensation of the movement. Sensation. They should be very much sensitive enough. And that's why these are the regions, which is lip, surface of the lip, fingertips, palms, and the sole. Because there we make a movement of grip. There we make the movement of we walk. When we walk, do we are walking? Do we see down and say that okay, surface is rough or surface is smooth? Our soul gets adjusted on the rough surface versus the smooth surface, tilted surface versus. So how it is able to do? Because of this information. Most of this information of Meissner receptors also is carried to the cerebellum, that is via the what we call it is the unconscious proprioception. That is what we call as the unconscious proprioception. They detect light touch. That is what is very important. They detect not fine touch. They don't detect the crude touch. They detect the light touch, and that is the importance of the Meissner's receptors. So these are the three receptors. That is what we talked about. Then there will be, we talked about the heat receptor, correct? That is a free nerve ending. Is there? There is another receptor which is deep down, that is called Clausius corpuscles. They are specially related with the cold receptor. They are specially related with the cold. That is what happens now when I keep the ice on my skin. Initially, easily I don't feel early the coldness, but slowly once this sensation moves, then I can feel. Heat can be felt much earlier than the cold. Then another receptor is there called reference corpuscle, 1 to 2 micron. Basically, it is at a junction of dermohypodermis. So whenever the skin moves, whenever I twist the skin, whenever I twist somebody's hand and just try to pull the skin, that usually gives a torsion effect. So they are stretch and torsion pressure is carried out by the reference corpuscles. All these are encapsulated corpuscles. So encapsulated corpuscles are Pacinian first, then second one is Meissner's, known as their locations and difference in their location. Then there are Clausius corpuscle, which carries a cold receptor. Free nerve endings carries the heat reception. Reference corpuscles are torque and the stretch. That is what you have to remember. Now, once we go there, now we'll go to the other important structure, which is modification. This is just a revision. This is called Merkus corpuscles. Then this is free nerve ending. Then this is the what is the Pacinian corpuscle. Then this is going to be the Meissner's corpuscle. Then there will be reference corpuscle and Clausius corpuscle. This is just a revision of all these things. Most of the receptors are shown here. Now we talk about the one of the important structure which carries immense importance in the various branches, as well as we are so much aware about our hair follicle. We think hair follicles are throughout the body. They are different in both sexes. Even the growth differs, and we are much more worried, or we can call as the which we are aware about our hair follicles. So, what are these hair follicles? So, try to see carefully this figure. See, the hair follicle is the dipping down of the epidermis. You can see it's going down. This hair follicles. So, hair follicles are elongated, keratinized structure derived from invaginations of the epidermal epithelium called as hair follicle. So, this is a modification of the epidermis. That is what first thing you have to remember. The cells will migrate down, and once they migrate, they will grow in a horizontal pattern. The cells will grow from the satum basale to the center, and ultimately central core will form as a keratinized structure, which will grow up, which will come out from the skin, and that is why we call as a hair. Okay, so hair has a outer part of the hair outside the skin is called hair shaft, and the rest of the part is called hair follicle, and hair follicle is further subdivided. That is one thing. I will talk about that. Another thing, what we relate with, see this epidermis gives some outgrowth. This outgrowth are the gland. We call it as sebaceous gland. So again, the sebaceous glands are the extension of epidermis, and they most of the sebaceous gland drains into the canal of the hair follicle. Another gland, which is again a modification of the sweat gland, but this is what we call it as the apocrine gland. They are specifically present like in axilla or perineum, so or areola of nipples. They are called apocrine glands. And then another gland which independently develops, again an extension of epidermis. It is a coiled structure. We call it as eccrine gland or also called as sweat gland. So these are the few structures we are going to see in detail. Hair follicle, sebaceous gland, and the sweat gland. The color, we'll talk later about that. So the color, size, shape, and texture of hair vary according to, you have to remember, age, genetic background, and region of the body. So these are the things what we have to remember. According to the age, amount of hairs will differ. Genetic background, that is also one of the important thing, and region of the body. Like in some part of the body, like in the palm and the sole, there are no hair follicles. But in some region of our body, there are dense, like a scalp. There is a lot of dense hair follicles. The growth of the hair differs in a male and female. Again, they also may dependent on steroid hormones, especially the estrogen, progesterone, and androgens. All skin has at least minimal hair except that of the palm, sole, the red of the lips, and urogenital orifices. So these are the places. So exception, remember it, can be used for various questionnaires. So I just put it minimal hair except that of the palm, sole, lip, urogenital orifices. There the hair follicles are absent. Otherwise, rest of the body has some amount of hair. As we can see here, face has about 600 hair follicles per centimeter square. And the remainder of the body, see the difference, is having approximately 60 per centimeter. Where the face as well as the scalp have much more hair follicles compared to the rest of the body structure. That is what you can remember. Hair follicles has a terminal dilatation. If you see here in this slide, you can see this terminal dilatation. That is what we call dermal papilla. That is what we call as the dermal papilla, or we call it as the hair bulb. And what this hair bulb contains? It contains now the sensory fibers as well as the blood supply. We always talk nourishing the hair. Lot of time our mom puts lot of oil on our hair and say that okay, this will nourish. That is all different thing. But then this what nourishment basically. There are drugs now which helps in the increasing the blood supply to the bulb, and then the related things are there. So there is what hair bulb. So what is hair bulb? Is the aid of the hair follicle which is shows the blood vessels and the nerves. Parts of hair follicle. Now we talk about the parts of hair follicle. So what are the parts of the how we divide it? We say infundibulum. It starts from the opening from the skin up to the opening of the subsebaceous gland. So up to the sebaceous gland opening, this much part we call it as infundibulum. Okay. Then second part, as this one, which is a narrower one. Many times the erector pylori muscle comes and attaches here. That's why this part, which is narrow one, second part is called isthmus of the hair follicle. Then you can see the bulge here. Can you see there's some amount of cells are seen? This is called the follicular bulge. One of the crucial areas, especially when we talk about the uh, dermatological skin surgeries, where we do the laser surgeries, we many times stimulate this area. And this area, which has been added up in recent times, it shows the amount of stem cells, epidermal cells, which will grow and will migrate in outer layer of the hair follicle, and then they will go on like they will act like a stratum basale, and then the cells will go on into the hair bulb. We're going to see the layers of hair bulb. So out of this outermost layer is formed by epidermal layers, and this is the storehouse of the stem cells of epidermis. So they are called follicular bulge. This is the third part of the hair follicle. Then we talk about this portion, inferior segment. We are going to deal in this detail how the layers are formed. This is well organized formation, and then ultimately, like the stratum corneum, the cells will be dead and then they will be falling away. Same thing happens that the stratum corneum practically forms the three layers of hair follicle. Middle one, that is having soft keratin, then there will be hard keratin, and then all the stages of development of epidermis. So this is called inferior segment or bulge or dermal papilla, and then this is the lot of growth here. so requires an amount of blood supply. Again, remember this is epidermis, epithelial cells. That's why there is no blood vessel directly inside. It gets through via this bulb, the vasculature. Also have a vascular nerve ending. That is what we talked about. So infundibulum, isthmus, follicular bulge, inferior segment. So above here we see in bit detail about the inferior segment now. Now this is how the inferior segment will be seen. From outside inward, we label it as outer layer inner. So from the most inner one, first three inner layers are called hair shaft. First three inner layers are called hair shaft. Middle one, which is growing cells coming from outside inside, that is internal root sheets. And now there will be outermost single layer that is called external root. So now the external root, you can see the migration of cell is coming from the hair bulge. And now they will come here, will get accumulated, starts dividing. Once they start dividing, they will be forming all the hairs of the root layer, because this plays an important role whenever we talk about hair transplant surgeries and all those things. So external root sheet cells migrate from epidermal bulge and they will act like a stem cell. Internal root sheet is further divided into three layers from outside inward, from the sixth, fifth, and fourth. Sixth one is called Henle's layer. People are very much fond of this word, so please remember. What is Henle's layer? Henle's layer is outermost layer of the internal root sheet. That is what is Henle's layer. Okay, that is called outer cuboidal single layer. So then there will be Huxley's layer. This fifth number is Huxley's layer. So this is how the cells are maturing. Then there will be an internal root sheet. This fourth number is internal root sheet. So these are all like internal root sheet is like stratum granulosum. Now the process from here apoptosis starts. That is what we have to remember. So that is internal root sheet, and now there will be keratinization. There will be then this is so internal root sheet has three. External root sheet has only one layer. Internal root sheet has three layers. So Henle's layer, that is outermost. Huxley's layer, that is the second one, and then there's internal root sheet or cuticular layer. Then it becomes squamous cells. From cuboidal to become the squamous cells. As we will go ahead, inner three layers cells start keratinizing in this layer. Now, as you can see, the section, you can see it is a cross section. You can see the external root sheet. That is what the cells are migrating now. Internal root sheet. Try to see it carefully. You can see the three layers here. One, Henle's layer, Huxley's layer, and cuticular. And now we see the internal root. It has three layers. One, two, and three. So, internalmost layer, most in the center, you see slightly yellowish color in the fresh specimen. This is usually a soft keratin present in the thick hair. Usually this can be seen very nicely in the scalp, and also we call it as the thick layer. You can see very clearly in the scalp this yellowish, that is medulla, that is called the medulla. Then we see the thick cortex, or this is having the hard keratin. It's very specific for hair follicle. Or there's a hard keratin. It almost forms the 80% of the hair follicle, which is going to grow and come outside. All this inner zone, that is innermost layer, will grow up and ultimately come out as a hair shaft. Now this also contains a specific protein called as CAPS, which is sulfur-related protein. That is called CAPS. That is called the keratin-associated proteins. That is 80% of this. It decides the texture, elasticity, and color of the hair. Who decides the cortex of the hair? Decides the texture, elasticity, and color of the hair. We talk about now. You get a semi-transparent keratinized squamous cells. So this, if you see, this outermost layer gives the semi-transparent keratinized squamous layer. This gives a shine to the hair. See, every part of the hair follicle we deal with. right from the cosmetology, right from into the treatment aspect. Now, so much of complicated formation of hair requires a gene. So, just as some a good information to keep with you, 17 keratin genes are known to help in formation of the hair follicle, out of which 11 are soft one, that is forming the medulla, type 1, and 6 genes are related with the type 2, that is the cortical thickness or cortical hard keratin. And then we talk about caps. No, caps has a huge amount. 85 genes are required for different types of keratin associated. Plays an important role in texture and variety of the things of the hair. So now there's a lot of research on what we can do with this, and a lot of research on how we can modify them. Those things like that. Just remember about this. Here, a central region of root happening in media producing large accumulated modulated cells. That is just a summary of this cell differentiated into reticulated. So you now know the root here. Okay, just go through this and this interview again. Now there will be melanocytes in the root of the hair, which helps in to giving, and again the same transfer of the melanin will be done, and that is how the hair color will be decided. Now we'll talk about the gland, associated glands. First gland is called the sebaceous gland. It's called the sebaceous gland. It's embedded in dermis, most of the body surface, except I can see that. What is this use of sebaceous gland? It uses a sticky fluid which helps in covering the hair of the skin, gives a shine to the skin. It is very much under the control of the various sex hormones, and that is why the skin texture changes right in the both sexes, as well as we talk about give the estrogen therapy, skin become more softer, more this one. This all this may happen because of this specific secretion, sebaceous gland. One important thing. Second thing, because of this second layer of the sebaceous gland, which is oily, also prevents cracking of the skin, also prevents what it is loss of fluid. So the sebaceous secretion has three roles to play. One, it gives a texture to the skin. Second, it gives the what we call it as the protection against the cracking and the mechanical this one. Third, it prevents the extra fluid loss. Okay, these are not found. The sebaceous glands are not found on the palm and the sole, but where they are in maximum, they are average about 100 such glands per square centimeter on the skin. But where they are maximum on the face and the scalp. That's why at your age, we always talk about acne vulgaris. So much we do for this acne vulgaris. What are acne vulgaris? Acne vulgaris is the infected sebaceous glands. See, in the scalp and face, they are around 400 to 900 per centimeter square compared to the rest of the body. And again, that's why in the scalp or in the face, we can get a sebaceous cyst. Usually, the sebaceous cyst opens in the hair follicle. Many times, when these ducts are blocked, initially what happens basically because of thick secretion under the influence of androgens, such as testosterone, its opening is blocked, the hair follicle is lost, and the swelling will be seen beneath the skin. Usually, if you try to see this, usually you see that an acne also, or we also call it sebaceous, we see the block dark color particle, that is the blockage, and the secretions will start get accumulating in the gland. And sometimes this acne will get infected, and that is what we say the infected acne or we call it sebaceous. If it is too large, especially in the scalp or on the nape of the neck, we have to remove it. Sebaceous glands are branched acinar glands with several acini converging at a short duct, which usually empties into the upper portion carefully. And then you try to see this. This is more of a lipid secretion. So you can see the larger cells, you can see the central nucleus, and you can see the multilobulated gland. So it's a very clear grape bunch-like appearance. And the in the HNE stain, you can see the grape bunch-like appearance. Most of the time associated with the hair follicle, we directly label it that this is sebaceous gland. And you can see as the cell grows from periphery to the center, slowly the nucleus is lost. The second important thing is the secretions of the sebaceous gland are holocrine variety. This is also this is the best example of holocrine variety of secretion. Why holocrine? Because once the secretion is accumulated, cell loses it completely and the secretion is poured. That's why it is called holocrine variety of the gland also. Okay, sebaceous glands are modified, especially in eyelids. Now just remember these names. Eyelids, sebaceous glands are modified to form two types of gland, meibomian gland and Zis's gland. These two glands plays an important role. Meibomian gland secretion helps to form a layer over the tear film, which is secreted by the lacrimal gland so that it doesn't get easily evaporated, and it is bactericidal also. And this is gland. This makes the hair which has been growing from the eyelid, eyelashes. It helps in smoothing up and the eyelashes, and this one will not allow the friction over the cornea. So these two glands, meibomian gland and Zis gland are basically modification of sebaceous gland in the eyelid. Then second is on the nipples of the areolar surface of the mammary gland. They again have a modified sebaceous gland. What is its importance? Basically, when the baby sucks and some amount of milk remains on the surface, this may crack the nipple. Many times, a woman will come to you, a lactating woman will come to you that she gets a lot of pain when they are feeding it. Then what we do, usually this areolar glands may not be functioning properly, or what, and then gives us to cracked nipple. So this areolar glands helps in preventing the cracking of the nipple. Then on the surface of the lip, we use a lot of lips, right from lipsticks to many things. We use it. That is on the surface of the lip with the vermilion border. Lot of sebaceous gland, modified sebaceous, keeping the lip moist. So these are few modification of sebaceous glands can be seen at the external genital surfaces, also especially at the labia minor and all those things. We see the lot of sebaceous gland. Formation of life process. I know a bit of late, but I will just complete this. Sebaceous gland develops from epidermis with the hair follicle as unilobar or bilobar structure. They are almost fully functional in second trimester. They contribute. If you see the newborn baby, we see the cheesy substance on the surface of the baby, which is one of the protective surface on the baby's surface, which has a lot of antibodies and all those things. So that is called vermic scasiosa. That is what we call as a vermic scasiosa. So some of major contribution is by the sebaceous gland of the baby, which gives this protective layer. And many times in a modern medicine, because it is sticky, many times patient says that it was very much give a hot water but to a baby will just clean up this one. But now we say please don't remove vermicellosa because that is a natural protection to the baby for initial few days. Second thing, it prevents the water loss from the baby also. So we have to make and change the tradition and say that okay, this is helpful. And in initial phases, just after birth, now once after birth, for some time, these cells will reduce its function, and then again, sebum is under regulation of sex hormone. That is what I am going to say. Now, this is something what we have treatment every 10 years. In males, 23% of the sebaceous gland function reduces, and in women, it is 32%. That's why we start getting in older people cracking of the skin, and we use a lot of sootheners and variety of things like from Vaseline to variety of things comes in the market. Okay. Function of this is protection from the microbes. One of the function it has been said it is protection from UV light. It gives a texture to the skin and it's a signal that okay, this is how we use some hormones even for a particular function, right from Botox to variety of other things, which is helping in the modification of function of the sebaceous gland. Sebaceous gland secretion is cells are distinctly large, lipid producing. So cells of the sebaceous gland are called sebocytes. They produce sebum. The production of the sebaceous secretion is called sebum. It takes around 8 days to produce it. And then sebum is having free fatty acids 57%, wax 27%, cholesterol 14%. The cell's nucleus slowly shrinks, undergoes autophagy, releases lipid. This secretion is called holocrine secretion. Sebaceous gland is under again the genetic variations. It also functions differently, different pH and temperature. The production is a process called sebum, which is gradually moves to the surface of the skin along the hair follicle. So this is what we talk about the sebaceous gland. We start about the sweat gland and the modification of skin in the next time. Thank you very much for patience. Thank you.
you, sir.